Carried the load without his partner in crime, beating their former team, the Oklahoma City Thunder, 123-108. He was lights out in the second half. When contested 6 of 7 from the field, the Rockets made 20 three-pointers. They certainly don't struggle with shooting the three. Max, I want to start with you on this because you've been critical of James Harden, and it's mostly just based on playoffs and him not showing up in the biggest moments. Do you think that they can win this series not having Russ?
I think they can. And the reason is what I have said about Harden is he went from flat-out choker. Like he fell so far off in the playoffs compared to his regular season performances, especially in the highest leverage moments. But every year, I see certain improvements from him there. And it started, I think, with his attention to the defensive end. And he started, that's something he could control, the effort on the defensive end and kind of alertness on defense. And that's so it seemed to me he's a guy who, if the shot's not falling, if whatever, at least he can put effort in somewhere else. I noticed that. Then he started having more good games in the playoffs, still choking in the biggest moments, dribbling it off his foot, looking for calls instead of hitting shots. I mention all the time, jumping under Draymond Green's legs, looking for a call when they could have stolen the game on the road. There's so many moments like that in his playoff career. Yet, fewer and farther between as time goes on. Now, let's look at yesterday. Okay, it's game 1. The Rockets should beat them, though they don't have Westbrook. They're the better team. They get Westbrook back. They should win. Let's look at what Harden actually was facing. That lineup, also mentioned on the broadcast, was the most effective 5 in the NBA this year. So obviously Chris Paul and Steven Adams and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Gallinari and Schroeder, who, by the way, has turned into a good defensive player. When did this happen? But at any rate, those 5, that's a really good 5. And in fact, statistically at least, the best in the league. And when they came into the game, and you kind of got the feeling again, like, okay, here it comes, Harden wouldn't let him do it. Again, just like Lillard, it's not just the level of play. It's at the biggest moments. And everyone can feel those pivotal moments. Harden kept coming up big, and he kept stifling the Thunder's momentum. And then you turn around and go, when did the Rockets get up this much? So can they win without Westbrook? If Harden stays that guy, and his job, he couldn't do it throughout the entire playoffs. But even against a good team, an underrated team, if Harden stays that guy, knowing he's going to get his dude back eventually in these playoffs, but he's going to have to be Superman every single game to get through the first round, then the answer is yes, they can do it. And I've been waiting for Harden to be that guy in the playoffs. One game in the books, so far, so good.
I've never felt you giving James Harden the respect that he deserves, but that's neither here nor there. Last night, he was sensational in terms of his 37 points, but primarily his 11 assists and the way he was distributing the basketball. He deserves a lot of credit. Jeff Green deserves a lot of credit. Eric Gordon deserves a lot of credit. But I still don't see this team being able to beat, they could, but I don't predict that they would beat Oklahoma without Russell Westbrook in a best-of-7 series, because the MVP of last night's game, one could easily argue, was Mike D'Antoni. Remember, you're playing one way all year, like Chris Paul said, and then you switch things up. They went to a zone defense, and Oklahoma City, it really stymied them. Because as Chris Paul articulated, you're preparing because you've watched the team play all year and you've seen them play one way, and then suddenly they throw something completely different at you. All of a sudden, out of the blue, once the playoffs begin, we've got to make adjustments. What happened? Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Dennis Schroeder, basically no shows on the offensive end of the floor. They combined for 15 points, but they didn't do much offensively. Particularly when you transition to a zone defense, you need elite guard play in order to overcome that and to make those necessary adjustments. And Chris Paul didn't have the greatest game either. The numbers looked nice, but some of it was padded as the game waned. In the end, Houston was able to get out to a cushion, and you know what happens when that transpires. You put the ball in James Harden's hands, and then you look at defenses pray for mercy, because this brother's an offensive juggernaut. So he had his 37. They had 42 points off the bench. When you look at that, combined with the fact that that zone defense really, really rattled them, you got to give credit where credit is due to D'Antoni, to Elston Turner and those boys, because obviously They know what the hell they're doing. We just expected it usually on the offensive end, but they really threw a monkey wrench in Oklahoma City's game plan defensively by throwing that zone. So I'd give him and Elston Turner the game ball for that, for coming up with that strategy, because I think that's what threw Oklahoma City off more than anything else. But again, if they win another game without Russell Westbrook, guess what, Max? I wouldn't even play Russell Westbrook. Let him rest that quad, because you'll need him as the playoffs wane. Make no mistake about that.
Look, I don't know why you say I don't give Harden enough respect. I'm not talking about the regular season, where he is correctly among the 2 or 3 best MVP candidates year in and year out.
You know exactly what I'm talking about.
I give him respect for that. I give him respect for his improvement on the defensive end, right? Where he's become a pretty good defensive player overall. Like, I give him respect for the fact that he's gotten better in the playoffs. But Stephen A., am I making it up? In the biggest games of his career, he has not been even his normal self, let alone the best version of himself.
Yeah, but you act like he's averaging 12 points, and he's still averaging over 30. The fact of the matter is, for the last 5 years when they lost, he lost to the greatest shooting backcourt in the history of basketball. By the way, Chris Paul goes down, and now the players begin this year, and Russell Westbrook goes down.
I get it. I'm not saying that there have been extenuating circumstances, but are you trying to tell me he doesn't fall off? He's still all-star play, but he goes from MVP play, from a 5-star player in the regular season, to a 4.5-star player in the playoffs. It goes down. Some dudes, Damian Lillard gets better.
All I'm asking you, well, Damian Lillard got better, but you weren't saying that when Portland got swept last year. And Damian Lillard, you wanted him to do more in the fourth quarter, but you ain't calling him a choke artist. We understand that this is stuff that comes with it. Hold on, I'm answering your question. Not to mention that, let's also take into account, when Houston went up against Golden State in that series, I was of the mindset, I don't give a damn what Harden does. KD, Steph, and Clay will find a way in a 7-game series. And then obviously it's been open to debate ever since, because Chris Paul pulled his hamstring in Game 5, couldn't go in Game 6 and 7. When we look at James Harden, I'm not saying that he was himself in terms of, the way that he plays. He elevated his level of play. What I'm trying to say is that he wasn't a choke artist, which at one time is what you called him.
But hold on, he was in that game. He wasn't, because we can't test your hypothesis. Anything, no matter how good Harden would have been. I'm saying Harden in the Game 7 against Golden State with KD, Clay, everyone was healthy. We can't even test your hypothesis. You might be right. We can't prove a counterfactual, but we'll never know, because Harden didn't elevate his game. He didn't even play like normal James Harden. Neither did the rest of the crew, but that's more when you need to elevate. He missed almost every shot.
By the way, educate me about something. What the hell is counterfactual? I mean, it counters a fact. What are you talking about? You always use that word. Explain to our viewers. When you say a counterfactual, you just throw it out there. Can you tell us that?
I will. You're saying, hey, even if Harden had done this, then that would have happened. And I'm saying, but he didn't do this. You can't prove that. You might be right. Maybe if Harden would have gone unconscious, just crazy.
Well, I got that from you. You do that all the time.
The Warriors would have elevated past that. We'll never know, because Harden was a lesser version of himself. My point is not to kill him over it. My point is there were too many moments like that in his career. This last night was a very good sign. No Westbrook against an excellent unit of 5, like a starting 5 or whatever you want to call it. That's the best in the NBA, right by the numbers. He elevated.
Harden has performed in first and second rounds all the time. Even some games in the conference finals he's performed. Stop it.
That's true.
Okay, I'll leave